Greetings! Welcome to the Week 20 Early Access Update for Hot Dogs, Horseshoes, and Hand Grenades. We're going to start off, as always, with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful! Man, 20 updates in a row, and somehow I have not dropped dead yet. You know what I have to say about that?
Wonderful!
Finally did it. So, what have we got for you this week? Well, we've got a bunch of new toys, a brand new system, some upgrades to a whole bunch of systems you've probably been using this whole time. So, where to start? Let's go ahead and start with our new toys. We have a PX4 and a CX4 carbine for you. So here's the handgun. Let's take a few shots. And what's nice about these, let's go ahead and bring the carbine over, is that these accept the same magazine. So if you want to go with a sort of, I think it's been referred to as the sort of cowboy setup, where you've got the exact same cartridge and sort of feeding mechanism for both your primary and secondary, you can do so with these. Oh, there we go. Wonderful. You'll notice as I'm firing, in addition to the target down range, we have a duplication of it here, including an indication on red there on what our last hit target is. Got a couple more changes to the paper target system, which I'll talk about in a sec. Let's go ahead and throw this over here. And then lastly, on the new firearm front, we have a delightful donation to the project by a wonderful fellow named Malte. This is a new MP5K. It replaces the one that's been in the game. I never liked the original model I found. It had some major inaccuracies on it, especially on its magazine, and it just looked, I don't know, it was inferior. So we got this new beautiful one that even has a custom top plate on its upper receiver welded on. So the MP5K can now accept top rail attachments. Got a new sound on here as well. Nice and thuddy. Absolutely love it. So, what do we have that took the most time this week? It most certainly is our new suppressor system. So I put a lot of thought into this in terms of exactly how I wanted this to be usable. I originally considered making suppressors sort of specific to a cartridge type, but seeing as there's already more than, I believe there's 14 or 15 cartridge types in H3, that would just become a pain in the butt to manage. So all suppressors are universal, even though the sounds for how they sound are local to the gun. So regardless of which suppressor you use on, say, this handgun here, they'll all sound, the gun will sound how it sounds. Which suppressor you pick is largely a cosmetic choice. And I figured that would be, the best way to handle it, because let's be frank, there's a lot of ways a suppressor can look, and a lot of them look cooler with various firearms, so I figured I would leave that up to you. So let's play around with this system using our firearm, our M9A1 here, that had previously had its suppressor welded to it. So just to start off with, for comparison, here it is unsuppressed. So now we want to put a suppressor on it. I'm going to pick, let's say, this one here. The way these work is you actually have to screw them onto the front of the barrel. So you want to do this by initially connecting it and releasing it. And then you want to grab the suppressor and twist in, what would this, if we're looking down the firearm, this would be in the counterclockwise direction. Oh, it's being a pain. Oh, we're all the way at the end. Beautiful. And now let's take a look at this. Now, you might be hearing that fire and be like, oh man, I was part of the group that really wished these sounded like they did in the movies. Well, never fear. In the options panel, in our firearm options category here, we have an option whether to use realistic suppressor sounds. Every single firearm that I have implemented suppressor support on, which is most of them, it's about 80%, has both a sound set for being realistic and a sound set for being more cinematic. So here's the cinematic sound set for this. Sounds much more like you're some sort of sneaky assassin. So yeah, and then to remove a suppressor, we want to grab it, rotate it clockwise until it stops, and then simply pull it away when it's at its sort of maximum rotation. Now, you always want to make sure you do fully screw them on, because just because it's affixed doesn't mean it's affixed well, because it's threaded. So if I just pop this on here and then squeeze off a few shots, oh, look at that. It went away. So yeah, now you might be asking, all right, Anton, so you've made these suppressors universal. What about for larger bore guns that, if we look at, say, this suppressor here, look at its port, that is clearly smaller than, say, our KWG. Well, suppressors have this handy functionality in that the moment that the suppressor sort of recognizes the suppressor mount, it will rescale itself to that gun. So in the case of our ridiculous magazine-fed shotgun pistol, boop, giant suppressor. Personally, I've always loved the way suppressors look on shotguns. They're always so preposterously sized. So let's check this out with the realistic sound. Fly through that mag. And then here it is with a more cinematic sound. And there you go. And when we remove this suppressor, screw it all the way back, pull it away, you'll notice it rescales back to normal. One of the things you should be aware of when you're, say, mounting suppressors to some of the longer firearms, especially, say, the Dragunov, it can be difficult to sort of position your hand sort of relative to it to screw it on nicely. What I like to do is actually alt grip the weapon first like this, remove my hand from the main grip, and that makes it significantly easier to affix the suppressor. Let's try this out. So, realistic. Cinematic. So yeah, so each gun has its different sort of character in regards to the suppressor sounds. I'm still tweaking them. The ones that I sort of associate more with the sort of spec ops or assassin-like character definitely have the most pew-pew sort of suppressor sounds on the cinematic mode. Yeah, let me know what you think of the sounds. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of different shapes to choose from to see which ones you enjoy the most. All right, so now on to some system upgrades. So first off, this is something that's been bothering a number of you for a while. I know is sort of two things related to handguns. One of them, loading magazines, and the other, actuating the slide. Well, I'm happy to say that the slides now behave correctly. You now no longer have to sort of grab them in the middle to slowly peek the slide back. You can grab them at an arbitrary place and then slowly pull them back, like so. So that should be way easier to handle and more reliable. And then secondly, when it comes to magazine loading, this is something that I have been at a bit of a crossroads at design-wise. Obviously, everything's sort of very physics-based in H3, but at the same time, there are certain handguns that no matter how much I've played with their collision geometry, loading mags into them kind of stinks. So I've created an experimental mode here for you to try. It's under control options called Use Easy Magazine Loading. What this does is if you are holding a magazine that matches a firearm that you have in your other hand, and the tip of that magazine and the well of the firearm are within a fairly tight range, the magazine will momentarily go non-physical. This should really aid you in terms of just slapping a magazine in. If you're looking quite carefully, you can see that that magazine sort of like glitched through the handle slightly, but especially for people who are sort of loading off screen or just want to do it rapidly, it's way easier to get it in there. Some of you purists will be like, no, I want to do it the physics-based, the hard way all the time. But especially for those of you fighting clunk or doing some of the more sort of time-sensitive modes, this is designed to be a compromise between the heavily physics-based everything and the fact that physics just can't quite handle resolving sliding collisions with geometry as fine as the well of a handgun. So please give this a try. As I said, it's in the control options at the bottom. Use easy magazine loading and let me know what you think. And then moving along, as you can see here, we have a new panel for our paper target system. So the way this works is finally we can change what unit we want things to be in, meters, yards, or feet. We've got independent commands for sending the paper target to the given distance, returning it to 0, and resetting it. And we have a, basically we can type in our number. This will automatically clamp the distance to the maximum range. So if I just try typing 9 a bunch, it will just clamp it to 30 meters. And then over on our paper score sheet, we now have a rolling tally. This won't say show your score once you're done, but we'll show it to you as it is currently, 157 shots, 676 points. And when we tap the sheet, it will basically move that down and give us a new set. So this should be way more legible and way more useful, especially those of you who are doing sort of controlled groups at a given distance and want to compare your performance in various contexts. So give this a shot. Let me know what you think. So we're over in the sniper range now, and I've made a couple changes to things here to hopefully improve the experience for you. For one, we've sort of relit it a little bit. I've done this as sort of a sequence of wide sort of flood spotlights, which both give you a better visual indication of the distance you're shooting at by giving you a sort of larger atomization of repeat there, as well as just making a number of targets easier to see. In addition to that, we've got something new on the first floor, which some of you might have seen in the video I posted last night. But to get there, let's try something new that is in the options. So after so much request, I have added, and mind you, this is very experimental, a fifth option for the menu button for navigation, which is the ability to toggle touchpad locomotion. So what do I mean by toggling it? Let's make sure my speed isn't too high here. Yeah, let's do 0.8. So the way this basically works is that, many games that use touchpad locomotion sort of have it bound to one consistent hand all the time. I'm not a fan of this. I always try to keep things as ambidextrous as possible. And so what I've done is in this mode, by clicking the menu button, you'll notice that this diagram shows up over the touchpad. What this tells you is that the touchpad is now in locomotion mode. You can click the menu button to pull it out. You can also steal it from one hand to the other by clicking the menu buttons. So this should allow you to very freely go in and out of that mode with whatever hand is needed at the time. Something to be aware of when you're in this mode, obviously the touchpad menu will not come up with this hand, but the touchpad messages will still be sent to whatever this hand is holding. The locomotion does not block those at the moment. I don't know if this is a good idea. It's something I've been torn on, but try it out for now and let me know if it gets in the way or mucks something up. So let's go ahead and grab our rifle and give this a try. As I've mentioned on Reddit and on the YouTube comments, I can handle this kind of locomotion for about 5 or 10 minutes max, and then it starts to really get to me. But I know some of you are far more resilient relative to it. Oh, something of worth. At the moment, I have forward, back, here, and strafing relative to the headset. I've done this because when you're sort of holding the foregrip of, say, a rifle, you might not necessarily be as cognizant of where your hand is pointing, especially if you're holding something sort of tight up to you. And I figured the headset was the more reliable point to use for orienting that. Once again, let me know what you think. Tell me if it works for you. Whoa, that acted a little weird. As you can see, my sort of stick to ground calculation is not perfect. This is using the sort of centroid of your play space for height. I might have actually been standing a little too far back for it. I should probably add a little indicator for that. So yeah, so we've navigated over to here. Click that off. Let's see that if I can find my sniping pillow that is somewhere on the ground in front of me. There it is. Cool, so we're gonna pop over a little bit. And so I've set up the same paper target system in the sniper range down near the ground. As this is I'm sort of imagining the lower area here is more for your prone firing setup. I'm going to go ahead, you could just drop this on the ground. I wanted to just take this moment to remind you all, you do have 2 quick belt slots next to your head, so I can just put this up here. Just listen for the haptic buzz when your hand's over it. Let's come on down to the ground. Move our sniping pillow over here. And let's send this out a good distance. Let's do 250 meters. Go to distance. Look at that sucker fly. Pull this back out. I'm actually going to take my mag out, duplicate it. Actually, we're going to put that up by the head and duplicate it. I also wanted to show one little feature. With all of the AK-ish weapons now, you can now pull the back bolt partially back without fully dechambering the cartridge to see whether or not you've already got one in there. Let's go ahead and get our controller situated here. Forward on I use a nice long pillow so that I can sort of set my shoulder about where this is, and I place my other controller up here to sort of function as my bipod. So let's go ahead and turn that magnification as high up as possible. I do want to get some sort of larger optics in here that both just have a larger lens at the rear and probably go up to a 40 or 50x. Oops, looks like we popped this away. Beautiful. Let's squeeze off some shots. Oh, a little low. Getting better. I haven't practiced much at this range. Oh, let's walk it up. Oh, walked it up too much. There we go. Right in the 10 ring. Let's blow up a watermelon to celebrate. Boom. There it goes. So yeah, give this a shot. Let me know what you think. Functions just the same way as it does in the indoor range.
Yo! Sorry, I got a bit of sort of Vive headset face right now. Been working on this and bug testing for tonight's release since I woke up this morning. We've got a few more things on the change log and on our fixes log that I want to go over, and then just talk sort of miscellaneously about where things are going next. So let's see here. Okay, so a few weapons that were not bolt hold open or shouldn't have been bolt hold open have been fixed. The SKS now has bolt release and bolt catch buttons. Let's see here. A whole bunch of, beyond the sort of suppressor sounds, I actually remixed a whole bunch of Firearms bass sounds. A number of them were legacy from before I got access to some higher quality sample packs that just sounded crappy. And I think gun sounds are so important in a game like this, because they're as much the identity of the firearm as the aesthetic elements of it. And I think there are a number of firearms in the set, like the P250, that folks didn't really gravitate towards because it had a dumb sound. So I've hopefully fixed that. P250, the M4, the Mark 18, the MP5, and the UMP, and as you just heard, the Dragunov all have new sounds. I think they match the identity of the firearm way more, and I've been enjoying them. So on to fixes. There have been a number of lingering foregrip fixes that should be fixed. If you are playing this update and you still have an unusual foregrip bug with a rifle, please let me know. I know there's still some standing stuff like the over-under shotgun, but I'm still trying to figure out how to handle that because that thing is so long that the way that I handle hinges via physics just breaks terribly, just because where the center of mass of the object is. So I need to figure out a way to handle that. I may have to abandon the physics active hinge for the over-under. Recoil has been heavily modified. So thus far, in all of our past updates for H3, recoil has been just muzzle rise. And it was like that due to some quirks of my posing system. There is now linear translation with the recoil as well. You'll notice it a lot more if you're not holding the alternate grip on a weapon. It's still not how I like it. I intend to still tweak the system, but I didn't have enough time this week with everything else. But basically what I want to do is more interpolate between sort of weapons held one-handed have significantly more muzzle rise, whereas weapons that are held with an alternate foregrip, that recoil impulse is translated primarily into sort of linear behavior, and muzzle rise goes down significantly, except for really heavy cartridges. So yeah, but that I need some more work on that. Shotguns, rifles, SMGs, and bolt-action rifles can no longer be fired when they're just held by the foregrip. That was the funniest bug that I've had in a while. A bunch of issues with collision sound have been fixed. Oh, the ammunition spawning panel, which after I added a couple more ammunition types recently, bumped 9mm off the list, now properly has multiple pages. You'll notice a little left and right arrow up at the top, so you should now be able to properly spawn all of the cartridge types. All magnifiers can now properly view the whole scene distance. I somehow didn't realize, probably because I was only testing them in the arena and the indoor range, that the 2x and 3x magnifiers had way too short of a camera distance. They only went out like 200 or so meters, so that's fixed. Derp. Fixed a bunch of locomotion interpolation bugs as I was implementing this first attempt at a touchpad movement. Once again, as you're trying it out, just please try to keep in mind that it's super experimental, and my level collision geo was not built whatsoever, assuming that would be a thing. So it's probably going to work better the flatter a level is. I don't know how well it will actually work for people in the breaching scene, and it will definitely do some strange things if you step away from the center point of your tracked range. Just fair warning. Let's see here. Fixed a number of handgun magazine ejection bugs. They should come out a bit cleaner. Yeah, and of course, RIP, the first weapon to be removed from H3, although replaced, is the old MP5K. You will not be missed, at least by me. That weapon came in a pack of several weapons where every single one of them had something major wrong with the model or the texture. Occlusion baked in place, that kind of thing. The MP5K in that pack was the only one that was actually usable properly for PBR stuff, and I won't miss it. So, anywho, so that's the changelog. Future stuff. Some of you might have seen the tease that I posted on Reddit a few days ago. I'm working on finally a nice outdoor range inspired by our good YouTube friend Hickok45. I know since the first video of his that I saw, I was like, oh man, I wish I could sit on a front porch and plink away down that. And so I sort of meticulously figured out what the dimensions of it are based on his sort of range tour videos and things like that, and have been building it out slowly and carefully as actually putting a forest environment on screen efficiently in VR with anything more complex than dirt simple shaders is really difficult because you just die a death by overdraw. The pixel cost just gets out of hand. But I've got something that performs pretty well. And so what I'm going to be working on this next week is finally reapproaching my ballistic system. Because if I'm going to be adding another range, especially one that has things like clay flower pots and 2 liters full of soda and things like that. I need to make sure my ballistic system can actually handle those cases well. And I've taken enough of a break from it that I think I know how I'm going to approach it mathematically to get significantly better behavior out of it. Doing a simulation, I'll show it sometime in a devlog. I have this obsessive spreadsheet of all of these physical parameters of various materials, like yield strength and fracture toughness and things like that, so that I'm actually trying to do the ballistic impact instead of trying to converge it to sort of observation of how much wood will a bullet go through. I'm trying to actually derive it analytically, and it'll never converge to reality, but I hope that it's at least nuanced and interesting. So that's what I'm going to be working on this week, along with a whole bunch of pre-production for the the 2 pillar modes that I want to return to and put a bunch more effort into, which is the Gunnasium and the breaching scene, because I bet those of you who enjoy the breaching scene are sick of my apartment, or at least that decimation of it. So I've got a scene partially done on that. I'm going to be working on it over the next couple weeks. So I might actually pop it in a little not quite finished yet, so that you folks can play with it and tell me what you think of the topology, the distances, the spaces, because it's going to replace the existing scene that's in there that was never really. I learned a lot about what dimensions work and which ones don't for this kind of gameplay with that scene, and there's a whole bunch that don't in that scene. So the new one will hopefully be much improved. So yeah, well, I hope you enjoy playing with all the new toys and the new systems. As always, run everything through its paces. Let me know what you think. It's good to be back. The break was much needed, but I've had a furious week. The change log, for this week is like 50 things long. So by the end of it, I was getting antsy. I was like, playing Deus Ex and The Witcher 3 is fun, but I gotta get back to my game. So it's been fun. So yeah. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. See you later.